What would you do if you saw someone walking on water in the middle of a storm? Imagine the sea is dark and the wind is wild. You are trapped in a small boat with your friends, and the waves are so strong that you think the boat may break in any way. Moment then, through the mist, you see a shadow walking toward you on the water, not sinking but moving, as if the waves were solid ground. Your heart begins to pound. Is it a ghost? Is it real, or could it be something even greater? The day had been long. In full of wonder, earlier that afternoon, thousands of people had gathered on the hillside to hear Jesus teach. The crowd was so large that the disciples were worried about how to feed them. But Jesus had taken 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish and blessed them. He broke the bread and gave it to his disciples to share, and in a miracle that amazed everyone. There was enough food for all more than 5,000 men, along with women and children, ate until they were full, and there were still 12 baskets of leftovers. It was a moment the disciples would never forget. After the miracle, Jesus told his disciples to get into the boat and cross the Sea of Galilee. He wanted them to sail to the other side while he stayed behind too. Dismissed the crowd, the disciples obeyed. They climbed into the wooden boat and pushed away from the shore. The water was calm at first. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with colors of red and orange as the boat moved farther from the land. Jesus climbed up the hillside alone. He wanted to spend time with his Father in prayer. He often chose the quiet of the night to pray away from the noise of the people. Disciples rowed their boat into the deep waters. Their voices echoed across the lake as they talked about what had just happened. They could not stop speaking of the miracle. They tried to count how many people had eaten. They wondered how bread could multiply in their hands. Some laughed in amazement while others sat quietly. Thinking about what this all meant, they knew they were following someone very special, someone unlike any teacher or prophet they had ever known. As the night grew darker, the boat was far from the land. The disciples looked back, but the shoreline was gone. The stars began to appear above them, and the air turned cool. They rowed slowly, trying to reach the other side. The sound of the oars dipping into the water and the gentle splash gave them a steady rhythm. For a short while, everything seemed peaceful. The sea looked calm under the light of the moon, but Jesus was alone on the mountain, still praying. His heart was fixed on his Father in heaven. He spoke in silence. He gave thanks. He lifted his disciples in prayer. He knew that storms would come in their lives, not just storms in the sea, but storms in their hearts. Jesus stayed there for hours alone with God while his friends sailed farther and farther away. This is where the stage was set. A quiet sea turning darker, a group of disciples still amazed by the miracle of the loaves and fish, and Jesus high on the mountain in prayer. The night was about to change. Soon the calm waters would rise with fierce winds. Soon fear would grip the hearts of the disciples, and soon they would witness something that no one had ever seen before, a man walking on water. The night was quiet, but it did not stay that way for long. The Sea of Galilee was known for sudden storms, and the disciples were about to face one of the fiercest as the boat drifted farther from shore. The wind began to rise. At first it was only a gentle breeze pushing against the sail, but then the gusts grew stronger. The calm surface of the lake changed into restless waves. The water slapped against the sides of the boat, and the wood creaked under the strain. The disciples tried to keep control. They tightened the ropes and pulled harder on the oars, but the wind kept pushing against them. The stars that had shone brightly a short time ago disappeared behind thick clouds. Darkness swallowed the boat, and the only light came from flashes of lightning in the distance. The sound of the waves crashed louder than their voices, and every time the boat lifted high on one wave, it fell hard into the next. Their clothes were soaked, their arms were tired, and fear crept into their hearts. They were fishermen, many of them, and they had faced storms before. Yet this one felt different. This storm carried a weight, as if the sea itself was against them. The wind howled through the night like a wild animal. The rain stung their faces. The water spilled into the boat, and they hurried to throw it back out with their hands and buckets. But no matter how much they worked, the storm only grew stronger. Hours passed, and the night seemed endless. The disciples began to feel hopeless. Every push forward was swallowed by the waves. The cold water numbed their bodies. The thought of drowning haunted their minds. Some cried out in desperation, asking God for help. Others gripped the sides of the boat in silence, too afraid to speak. Their faith was being tested in the darkest of night sand. Then, in the middle of their struggle, something even stranger happened. Through the mist and the crashing waves, they saw a shape. Moving across the water. At first, they thought their tired eyes were playing tricks. Lightning flashed again, and the figure grew clearer. Someone was walking on the waves as if the storm could not touch him. The disciples were struck with terror. Their hearts raced, and their fear grew even greater. They whispered to each other, trembling in disbelief. "It is a ghost," they said. For what else could move like that upon the raging sea? The boat rocked violently as the disciples clung to one another. Staring into the night, the storm roared around them, yet their eyes were fixed on the figure drawing closer step by step. The fear that had already filled their hearts now doubled. Was this some spirit of the deep? Was it a warning of death? Or could it be something beyond their imagination? The night of fear was only beginning, but soon the storm would reveal not just the strength of the wind and waves, but the power of faith and the presence of the Son of God. The storm raged around them. The waves rose higher, and the boat groaned like it could break apart at any moment. The disciples clung to the wet wood, their hands shaking from cold and fear. They had seen shadows on the water before. Never like this, never something that moved with such calmness. While the sea itself roared in anger, the figure drew closer step by step. His robe did not sink, his feet did not slip. Walked as if the storm bowed beneath him. The lightning cracked again across the sky, and in its bright flash, the disciples saw his face, but their fear was too great to understand. "It is a ghost," they cried, voices breaking against the wind. Their fear was louder than their hope. But then a voice cut through the storm. It was strong yet gentle. It carried across the waves like sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." The words sank deep into their hearts like an anchor dropping into the sea. The wind still blew, and the waves still crashed. But in that moment, something changed. The sound of his voice was unlike anything else. It did not belong to fear. It belonged to peace. The disciples stared wide-eyed, their shouts turned into silence. Their fear began to bend into wonder. Could it really be him? Could it be their Master, the one who had healed the sick and fed the thousands? Could the man they followed truly have power even over the sea? Peter's heart beat faster than the waves. His mind raced between fear and faith. He looked at the figure on the water and called out, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." It was not a simple question. It was a test. Peter wanted to be sure. He wanted to step out of fear and into trust. If it truly was Jesus, then even the water beneath the storm would hold him. The storm did not stop. The waves did not grow calm. Yet Jesus looked at Peter and gave only one word: "Come." That word carried more power than the waves. It was not shouted. It was not forced. Yet it moved Peter more than the wind or the storm. Around him, the disciples clutched the boat, too afraid to even imagine leaving its safety. But Peter began to rise. His hands let go of the wood. His feet edged toward the side, his eyes locked on Jesus. The storm still raged, but in that moment, the sea was no longer the master. Faith was calling him. Fear told him to stay, but love told him to step forward. What Peter would do next would change everything, not only for him, but for everyone who watched from that fragile boat on the raging sea. The boat rocked wildly. The disciples held tight, their knuckles white with fear. No one dared to move except Peter. His heart thundered louder than the storm. He had heard the word from Jesus, "Come." That single word shook him more than the lightning splitting the sky. It was not just an invitation. It was a command to trust, to step into the impossible. Peter's sandals pressed against the edge of the boat. The wood was slick with rain. His hands trembled, but his eyes did not leave Jesus behind him. The other disciples whispered, shouting over the storm, "Peter, stay in the boat. Are you mad? You will drown." But Peter's spirit burned. He could not remain where fear lived. He had to step toward the one who called him. The sea raged below, waves lifted and crashed like angry beasts. Yet Peter lifted one foot and placed it over the side. His body leaned forward. His heart gasped as his foot touched the water. It did not sink for a moment. The storm seemed to pause around him. His foot rested on the surface as if the sea had turned to stone. His other foot followed, and suddenly Peter was standing outside the boat, standing on the waves. The disciples froze in awe. Their mouths opened, but no words came. Peter took his first step. His legs shook, but the water held. He took another step, then another. Each one drew him closer to Jesus. Each one carried him further away from fear. The storm roared, but his eyes were fixed on the man before him, his master, his Lord, the one who... For a heartbeat, faith carried him. His steps were steady. His courage was alive. He was walking on water, a man defying the impossible, a fisherman from Galilee, now treading where no man had ever walked before. The disciples could hardly believe what they saw. Jesus stood calm in the chaos, his presence steady as the storm bent around him. Peter's heart leapt with wonder. He was truly walking toward his Savior, but faith is aflame, easily shaken. Peter's eyes shifted. The wind howled louder. The waves rose higher. He saw the storm more than the Savior. The sea's fury became greater in his mind than the voice that had called him. Fear rushed back like a flood. His courage cracked. His foot sank beneath the water. Panic seized him. The waves climbed over his knees. He was sinking fast. Peter cried out with every breath, "Lord, save me." His arms flailed as the storm swallowed him. But even in his fear, his eyes turned back to Jesus. His voice broke, yet it reached the only one who could rescue him. The moment he called help was already on the way, and there in the raging sea, as Peter sank under the waves, Jesus reached out his hand. It was strong, unshaken by the storm. His grip would soon prove that faith may falter, but his power never does. Waves rose around Peter and pulled him down like hands of the deep. His arms splashed wildly, but every movement only dragged him lower. The storm roared above his head and water filled his mouth. He had walked for a moment on the impossible, but now fear had swallowed him. He was sinking into the sea that had always been stronger than men, but even as the water pulled him under, his voice broke through the storm. "Lord, save me." It was not a long prayer. It was not carefully spoken. It was a cry of desperation, a shout from a drowning man, and that cry was enough. Before the sea could claim him, a hand reached through the storm. Strong, steady, unshaken fingers wrapped around his wrist and pulled him upward. Peter's body lifted out of the water. Like a child drawn into safety, his chest heaved for air, his eyes locked on the one who held him. Jesus stood there above the waves, his robe untouched by the storm, his face calm, though the wind screamed. Jesus looked at Peter with eyes that saw deeper than the surface. He saw the fear, he saw the doubt, yet he also saw the faith that had dared to step out of the boat. His voice carried over the sea. "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" It was not harsh, it was not cruel, it was the question of a teacher to a student, a reminder that trust must not break when fear resides. Peter clung to his hand, his body shaking, the water dripping from his hair. The storm had not stopped yet. The waves still lifted and fell around them. But in that moment, Peter knew the safest place in the world was not inside the boat. The safest place was in the grip of Jesus. Together they turned back toward the boat. Step by step, they walked across the same waves that had threatened to swallow Peter. The disciples inside the boat watched in stunned silence. Their fear turned to awe as they saw Jesus not only standing on the water, but saving their friend from it. The sea still raged, yet it could not overcome the one who commanded it. When they reached the side of the boat, Jesus helped Peter climb back, and the wood was soaked. The disciples were drenched, but their eyes never left him. The moment his foot touched the boat, something incredible happened. The wind stopped, the sea flattened into calm silence. The storm obeyed his presence, as if creation itself recognized its master. The disciples gasped at the sudden peace. One moment the storm had screamed in their ears, and the next there was nothing but the gentle lap of water against the boat. They sat frozen, their breath held, their minds racing. Jesus had not only walked on the water, he had rescued Peter and silenced the storm itself. The fear that had ruled their hearts only moments ago was now replaced by something greater, a deep, unshakable awe. The sea lay still like glass. Not a ripple of anger remained. The boat floated quietly, as if it too had been humbled by the presence of the one who stood within it. The storm that had terrified them moments ago was gone so suddenly it felt like a dream. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the disciples, their chests rising and falling as they tried to grasp what had just happened, their eyes moved from the calm water back to Jesus. He stood soaked in the night air, yet untouched by fear. His hand still rested on Peter's shoulder as if to say, "You are safe now." The disciples had seen him heal the sick. They had seen him feed thousands with only a handful of food. They had seen his power before, but this was different. The sea itself had bowed to him, the wind had laid down at his command. No one spoke at first, their hearts were too full. Their mouths too stunned, they sat dripping with rain. Staring at him in awe, slowly whispers began to form, rising among them like the first notes of a song. "Truly, you are the Son of God," one said, his words trembling with both fear and wonder. Another nodded, tears welling in his eyes. They all felt it in their bones. This was no ordinary teacher, no simple prophet. They were standing in the presence of the Lord of creation. They bowed low in the boat, not out of custom, but because their knees could not hold them in the weight of his glory. The storm had brought them fear, but the calm brought them something even greater, reverence. They worshipped him there in that small wooden boat on the vast sea. Their voices were quiet yet full of power as they declared their faith with the night sky as their witness. Peter sat wet and shivering, but his heart burned. He had felt the water beneath his feet. He had felt the waves rise over his body, yet he had also felt the grip of Jesus pulling him from the deep. He had learned in one night what words could never teach. Faith is not in the strength of your step, but in the one who calls you forward. His eyes met those of his master, and though he had doubted, he now knew beyond doubt that Jesus was truly Lord. The sea stretched silent around them. The stars broke through the clouds above, shimmering like 1,000 witnesses to the miracle. The disciples no longer feared the waters, for the one who had created them was in their midst. Their journey was not yet finished, but their hearts had changed forever. The night on the Sea of Galilee was not just about a storm and a rescue. It was about something far greater. It was about faith in the middle of fear, about trust when everything around you tells you to sink. The disciples had seen Jesus feed the hungry. They had seen him heal the broken, but in that storm they learned that he was not just a teacher of truth. He was the Lord of the wind and waves, the one who saves when faith falters. Peter stepped out because he trusted the voice that called him. He walked for a moment, not by his own strength, but by keeping his eyes on Jesus. Yet when his eyes turned to the storm, he sank. We are not so different. When life's storms crash around us, when fear rises, when doubt creeps in, we too begin to sink. We lose sight of the one who calls us forward, but Peter's cry was simple, and it was enough. "Lord, save me." And Jesus did not wait. He did not let him drown. He reached out instantly. His grip was sure, and his rescue was certain. That is the same promise for every heart that calls to him today. The lesson of that night is clear. Do not let the storm be louder than his voice. Do not let fear blind you to his presence. Faith is not about walking perfectly on the water. It is about reaching for his hand when you fall. The safest place is never the boat or the calm sea. The safest place is with him, even if the waves are raging. So, when the storms of life rise against you and fear whispers that you will sink, remember the man who walked across the water and calmed the sea. Remember the hand that reached into the storm to pull Peter back up. Remember that he still speaks those same words to you. Take courage, it is I do not be afraid. And if you ever feel yourself sinking, do not stay silent. Cry out, "Lord, save me," and he will, just as he did on that night long ago. For the one who rules the wind and the waves has not changed. He is still the Savior. He is still the Son of God. He is still the one who comes to us in the storm.